Imagine you offered someone a 35% pay rise, covered their exam fees, promised them thousands of new jobs, put it all in writing, gave them a deadline, and they still looked you dead in the eyes and said, "No thanks, would rather stand outside in the cold with a placard." That is exactly what just happened to Keir Starmer. And we are only getting started. Welcome back to British Reform, where we cut through the noise and tell you exactly what is going on in this country. And right now, what is going on is that junior doctors have officially confirmed their next strike. Walkout number 15. 15. At this point, it is not industrial action. It is a subscription service. Let's set the scene properly, because context is everything here and the government would very much prefer you didn't have any. Earlier this week, Keir Starmer sat down, put on his most serious prime ministerial face, and issued the British Medical Association a 48-hour ultimatum. Call off the strikes, or the deal gets pulled off the table. Very tough. Very decisive. The kind of move that looks great on the morning news and then completely falls apart by tea time. Because the BMA took one look at that ultimatum, folded it neatly, and posted it straight back to Downing Street. The strikes are going ahead. Junior doctors walk out on April 7th and they are not coming back until April 13th. A full week. Gone. Just like that. Now, Starmer called this decision, and he actually used this word, reckless, which is a strong word coming from the leader of a government that is currently managing multiple crises simultaneously and losing ground on most of them. But let's be fair and actually look at what was on the table, because this deal was not nothing. The government's offer would have left the average junior doctor around 35% better off than they were 4 years ago. On top of that, doctors would have had their compulsory exam fees reimbursed, which, for anyone who has been through medical training, is a genuinely significant cost, and the deal included a promise of 4,500 new specialty training posts over the next 3 years. Starmer also wrote in the Times that this represented an above-inflation pay rise for this year alone. He made the case, clearly and publicly, that this was a serious offer, and then the BMA said no. But here's where it gets a bit more complicated, because the BMA's argument is not simply we want more money. Their position is about something called pay erosion, the idea that junior doctors' salaries have been hollowed out in real terms over many years, and that even a substantial percentage increase now does not undo a decade of being underpaid relative to inflation and cost of living. They pushed for a 26% rise. The government came back with something different. The BMA said it was not enough, and now here we are, back at square one, again, for the 15th time. What makes this even messier is the revelation that the BMA leadership rejected the offer without putting it to a membership vote. Think about that for a second. The union's committee made the call on behalf of all junior doctors without asking them. Starmer pointed this out himself, saying that doctors were not even given the chance to decide for themselves. Whether you think the offer was fair or not, that is a significant point. If your union rep declines a pay deal without consulting you, that is not democracy. That is someone else deciding what is good enough for you. And there will be plenty of junior doctors quietly furious about that, even if they agree with the outcome. The immediate fallout from the deal collapsing was swift. The government confirmed that those promised 1,000 extra training places that were apparently ready to go live this month, will now not be delivered in April. The Department of Health said that with the NHS now having to prepare for strikes and renewed uncertainty, it is simply not operationally or financially possible to launch those posts in time. So thousands of trainee doctors waiting for those positions are now caught in the crossfire. Not because of government policy, not because of the BMA, but because two sides cannot get in the same room and agree. And real people pay the price. The Department of Health, in language so carefully measured it could only have been drafted by someone who has spent years avoiding accountability, described the BMA's decision as disappointing. Disappointing, a word usually reserved for soggy sandwiches and cancelled train services. Not, apparently, for the collapse of negotiations affecting millions of NHS patients across England. Right, and speaking of people who are never short of a strong opinion, enter Kemi Badenoch. The Conservative leader used this moment to call for something rather dramatic. She wants the government to ban doctors from striking altogether. put junior doctors in the same legal category as police officers and the military, professions that are barred from taking industrial action. She has been saying this since she became leader last summer, and she brought it back up this week with considerable force. Her argument is straightforward. Labour gave junior doctors a 28% pay rise, which she pointed out most workers in this country could only dream of, and they are still walking out. At some point, she says, enough is enough. Now, banning strikes is one of those policies that sounds extremely satisfying to about half the population and triggers immediate alarm bells in the other half. And both reactions are understandable. On one hand, the NHS is an essential service. Doctors are not the same as workers in a factory making widgets. When they walk out, on the other hand, and this is where it gets thorny, doctors are not soldiers. They did not sign up to surrender their employment rights. Stripping an entire profession of the legal right to withdraw their labor is a serious constitutional step, and one that tends to generate legal challenges faster than you can say judicial review. It would also do absolutely nothing to fix the underlying tension between the profession and the state, which would simply go underground and fester in a different form. You can ban the strike. You cannot ban the resentment. What kemi's intervention does do, politically, is put clear water between the Conservatives and the government on this issue. It is a bold, headline-grabbing position that resonates with people who are tired of watching the NHS be held hostage while politicians dither. Whether it would actually work is a separate question entirely, but it lands hard in the news cycle, which is clearly the point. Meanwhile, Wes Streeting, Health Secretary, man currently having a very bad week, has apparently been urged by commentators to show more maturity after backing himself into a corner with the junior doctors, which is a polite way of saying that the handling of this entire dispute has been less than masterful. Streeting has been vocal, combative, and occasionally effective, but the optics of this latest collapse are not good for him or for the government. You do not issue an ultimatum unless you are prepared for it to be ignored. And if it is ignored, you need a plan. What the plan is right now is not entirely clear. Here is the thing that gets buried in all the back and forth about percentages and training posts and union politics. This is not just a pay dispute. This is about what kind of country Britain is going to be when it comes to public services, and specifically whether the people who run those services feel valued, respected, and properly supported. Junior doctors spend a decade training. They work brutal hours. They carry enormous responsibility. The fact that we have reached 15 rounds of strikes in this dispute is not a sign that the BMA is uniquely unreasonable. It is a sign that something has been fundamentally broken in the relationship between the government and the medical profession for a very long time. And no single deal, however generous it looks on a spreadsheet, can fix that overnight. What fixes it is leadership. Sustained, consistent, long-term leadership that treats the NHS not as a political football to be kicked around at election time, but as the national infrastructure it actually is. We are not seeing that leadership right now. What we are seeing is crisis management, deadline setting, disappointed press releases, and another week of cancelled appointments. April 7th to April 13th. Mark it in your diary. Not because you want to, but because the system that is supposed to care for you when you are at your most vulnerable is once again going to be running on reduced capacity, and nobody in power seems to have a credible plan to make sure this is the last time. If this kind of no-nonsense breakdown of what is actually happening in British politics is what you come here for, then make sure you are subscribed to British Reform. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and drop your take in the comments. Do you think the BMA was right to reject the deal, or did they just blow up the best offer they were going to get? Let's hear it. We are back very soon.